Welcome back everyone, hope you're doing well. Following up from the last lesson where we went through all the table and table service setups in the system, today's lesson is going to be closely related to that. We will be covering receipt and remote printing and all the related bits and pieces like printer profiles, printer types, and printer formats before getting into SmartPOS to see some demos and see how different things can be printed to receipt printers and to remote printers. Before we get into back office and start running through all the setups though, it might be helpful to start with answering some basic questions about remote printing. We are going to cover receipt printing in this lesson too, by the way, but that's much more straightforward than the remote printing setups are. So for remote printing, maybe we should start with an explanation of what remote printing is. Now I'd venture to guess that you might already know what it is, or at least have a pretty good idea of what it is, even outside of the context of BPOS and point of sale systems. So yeah, hospitality and BPOS aside, remote printing is simply the function of printing from some kind of workstation to a printer in another location. Of course, in our case, the workstations are SmartPOS tills, and the printers are the remote till printers that are usually found in the kitchen or behind the bar or wherever else the venue might need an order docket or a printout printed to. So a takeaway or home delivery, like a packing station, could be another option there. Whatever the case may be, printer devices for the physical printer hardware themselves are added to the till in the venue stores and tills list in back office. You might remember that from the System Setup 101 lesson, so that with those set up properly and the hardware in place for those printers, we can then route dockets to the right remote printers and communicate orders to operators in the venue. So a bit more efficient than, say, someone taking an order and then having to run back to the kitchen or run to the bar and verbally explain that order to someone, or someone shouting through the restaurant or something like that. This whole remote printing concept kind of makes all of that much more efficient and easier to communicate those things. Now, before I get ahead of myself with how all of that will need to be set up, just to make sure that products always print to the correct printers, I will also need to explain what printer profiles in BPOS are and what they're used for. Otherwise, you might start to have some questions as I begin to explain how everything is going to tie together to make sure that product A always prints to the correct type of printer. So printer profiles are used as a way of choosing and setting the printer types that products will print to when they're sold. I'll explain the concept of printer types in a minute too, by the way, but to summarize for now, when a product is sold, we can communicate that information to up to 6 remote printer types. Maybe 2 remote kitchen printers and a delivery station printer, for example. So neither the printer profiles or the printer types are actually going to define the physical printers themselves, but rather are used together along with the other settings to route remote printing correctly. So how is all of this set up and organized so that the information regarding sold products can be routed to the correct remote printers? Well, as you'll come to see when we get into back office in a minute, printer profiles are configured at the organizational or the global level, so the highest level that we've got. Printer types, which I mentioned a minute ago, are configured at the venue level, and they're assigned to printer profiles to help route products to the correct remote printers. At the till level, a physical printer is assigned for each printer type, and to round it all out, printer profiles are assigned to products. Now that can be done to products at the global level for products and at the prod store level. We'll get into more of that in a little bit. It is a bit of a web between all of these components at the global level, the venue level, the till level, and potentially at the prod store level, but it does ensure consistency and efficiency across the board when we're dealing with multiple stores and potentially multiple venues. I know we still have yet to set up additional stores in this course. That is the next lesson, and we're not going to be covering anything in depth regarding multi-venues, but Because use cases do exist where one product from the database can belong to, be sold in, and therefore print to various stores, we do need to be able to set up some central consistency with regards to remote printing. What that does from the global perspective in large organizations is it's going to make sure that a product, let's just say a cheeseburger, I love cheeseburgers, is always going to print to the same collection of types of printers, whether it's sold in the main restaurant, the bistro, or from a delivery or takeaway till. Now, at the moment, you may be confused a little bit. It might seem like there's a figurative web of components and settings to unravel when it comes to remote printing, but it really isn't too complicated once we get into it, and hopefully I can convey that properly in this lesson. There isn't necessarily a right or wrong place to start, but let's start at the bottom or the end, so to speak, and then sort of just work our way through it. So where we'll start then in back office is here in workstation maintenance, and we are on the printing setup tab. Now for each workstation, we've got 16 total printer types, where we can select both the physical printer and the printer format that'll be used when printing certain things to our remote printers. Basically when certain print jobs are performed. So this number of printer types, by the way, may vary depending on the software version that you're running and may change in the future, but at the moment we've got these 16. Some of these printer types over here on the left are hard-coded to print different things or to print different print jobs. So for example, the receipt printer type is going to print receipts, balance reports, other printouts like that from the till, things like stock transfers and so forth too. The table printer type, that's going to print table sales. The account printer type is used when printing account sales, so on and so forth. As you can see, we do have 5 others down here that can be used for a variety of miscellaneous printing purposes. These ones are not hard-coded, so things like label printing or ticket printing, a couple examples of what these could be used for, some higher level things that we will not be getting into in this course, but just to give you an idea of what they could be used for. They could also be used for remote printing if these 6 over here aren't enough. However, we cannot rename these others from other 1 through 5, whereas these 6 over here, remote 1 through 6, can be renamed, and I'll show you how we can do that in a minute. Now, all these printer types will come up again when we look at printer profiles because the printer types can all be assigned to printer profiles. Remember, printer profiles sit at the global level, so by assigning a collection of printer types to a printer profile and then assigning a printer profile to a product, we're saying that same collection of printer types will always be printed to when that product is sold and print to its remote printers. For example, let's say we've got a printer profile, I'll just call it printer profile ABC, and that it is always going to print to the printer types of, let's say, remote 1, remote 3, and remote 5. So maybe those all correspond to different kitchen stations. Then no matter which till we're using, the physical printers that are allocated to those printer types for each till are what will be used and printed to. So maybe those remote printers correspond to kitchen stations, like I said, for maybe the grill, the fryer, and then for the expo or the pass, for example. And maybe we've got that printer profile assigned to our cheeseburger. Then whenever the cheeseburger is sold, it'll print to those same printer types, regardless of the till it's sold from, and regardless of which physical printers those printer types are routed to. For this till here, I do have some virtual printers set up, which you may remember again from the System Setup 101 lesson, how we can create printer devices. So using that example, when a cheeseburger is sold, it's going to print to the virtual printers here that are assigned to these printer types. In this case, I do just have one set for remote 1, but we might also set a virtual kitchen printer for remote 2, and we can pretend that these are different virtual or different kitchen printers. We can pretend that I've got a few physical actual printers set up instead of a virtual kitchen printer here, and that when that product is sold, it's going to print to potentially 2 or 3 different kitchen printers, 2 or 3 different stations in the kitchen. But then let's say, for example, that from another till maybe in this same store or from another store altogether in the venue, that there are different physical printers assigned to the printer types on a different till. The cheeseburger will still print to the same printer types when it's sold, but possibly to different physical printers if need be. If all of this isn't coming together and clear yet, that's okay. I do still have more to explain, and then I'll demonstrate full circle, sort of a better visual example if you're into that sort of thing. Now remember, I said these 6 remote printer types here can be renamed. So how do we do that? I just save that and we go to our venue settings. They can be defined on the Names tab, where we have this section over on the bottom right here called Printer Types. So in a new database, these are going to be blank, which is why in Workstation Maintenance they are just showing as Remote 1 through 6, but they'll typically be used for, kitchen printers, bar printers, etc., and named similarly or named however they're going to be used, however those printer types are intended to be used. So if I add some names to these, cool. So I have some added there. If I now save this and we go back to Workstation Maintenance, we can see that those names have changed just like that. So this is just a way of customizing the names of these 6 printer types so that they can have some meaning rather than simply numbers. By all means, they can just be left undefined if you choose to leave them as just Remote 1 through 6, but we do have the option there to rename them. So now that we have these named, that cheeseburger example might make a little bit more sense. Maybe when we sell one from this till, we need that information printed to the grill printer type, to the fryer/sides printer type, and to the expo/pass printer type. As long as the physical printers at those corresponding stations are set up correctly and the hardware is all good to go, that is where they'll print to. So for this here, I will need to set our virtual kitchen printer for that as well. When we get into an example later, you'll see that even though these are all going to the same virtual kitchen printer, that they will print out separately as though they were printing to separate printers. But yeah, again, these are just 6 of the 16 total printer types that can be assigned to printer profiles, which are then subsequently assigned to products to determine which remote printers, which physical remote printers, they will be directed to when the product is sold. So speaking of printer profiles, I will save this and we'll need to head to the operational setup menu where the printer profiles component can be found. And this is where we can maintain our list of printer profiles, empty at the moment of course. Not too much in this window to really explain though. The list will show a printer profile ID, a name, which printer types are assigned to each one. Each printer profile can be assigned from anywhere between 1 and 6 printer types to print to. So for example, let's add one. What we'll do here is we'll make one to assign to the grilled protein dishes in this database. And you can see that when we open this, or when we go to create a new printer profile, we have a little explanation here. It says a printer profile defines the remote printer types that a product will print at when sold. These are not physical printers, but just printer types. A remote printer type may be kitchen or grill. These are defined in the venue record. Then for each till, you can assign the physical printer to use for each printer type. Explained quite well there. It's not too far off from how I've explained this over the past few minutes, I'd say. So I will name this one Main Restaurant Grilled, and I will assign 3 printer types to it. Let's go with grill, and then we will do the fryer/sides, and then expo/pass. That way, when one of the products that we then assign this printer profile to, one of our steak meals, for example, when one of those is sold, those 3 areas of the kitchen will be notified by way of the remote printer routing. That way the chef who needs to make the steak itself will get a printout at their station, the chef who needs to make the sides will get a printout at their station, and the person working the expediter station, sometimes called the pass, will also get a printout at their station. What I'll do is I'll pause the recording here. I'll create a few more of these. If I save this, we can see that is going to show in the list now. We can see the name and we can see the printer types that it is going to print to. So what I'll do is I will pause the recording. I will create a few more of these and then we can assign them to our products. Alright, so I've made a few more here to cover all the needs in this venue for now. By the way, I didn't quite show this, but if we scroll down all the way in here, we do have all 16 of those printer types available that we can select from to print to for these. Now, your system may require something similar, but may very well require fewer or more than what I've got here, and obviously will need to correspond to the areas of the venue where products will need to print to. But with these configured here, we can then go to the product list and we can assign our printer profiles to products. So I might just start with, let's go with our beef and lamb dishes, and we'll just start with the chef special beef dish. So we can find the printer profile drop down right over here on the right hand side, sort of near the top. At the moment, none of the products in the database have any remote printing assigned, so they're all just going to be set to no remote printing. But now that we do have those printer profiles created, we will have some that we can choose. So for this one, I'll set this to the main restaurant grilled. It will be very easy to change this down the line if we ever need to for any reason. In fact, at any point, if we need to add or change around the printer profiles and other remote printing setups that we've seen so far and that we'll see throughout this lesson, it really isn't too difficult once you understand how it all works together. That way, if down the line things change, maybe operationally, and we need to make a printer profile that's specific to beef or specific to lamb or some other protein, for example, we can do that. So I'll save this for this product, but before we move on, there's a couple things regarding the product printer profile assignment that I do want to point out. The first thing is that don't worry, we will not need to go product by product in the database to assign these. If you were getting a bit worried there that maybe you've built your product database with a few hundred products and now you're dreading having to go through and set those printer profiles for each of them. This is an instance where having the product list set up into groups of similar products will definitely have a benefit. So if I right click on the product list anywhere, we have an option in here called product change by range. If I click that, that is going to open a window where we can change a number of settings for all of the products in an entire product group at one time. Now that goes not only for the lowest branch of product groups, but also for parent groups. We can go all the way up to the base product group if we need to change some things here and do sort of bulk changes to the product list at one time. Probably should have shown this to you sooner, but I guess better late than never. You're seeing it now. So we've got everything in here from turning on the use group settings flag to sorts and types, to base size and reordering settings, to size names and product flags, and our printer profiles are right here in the top right. So from this drop down, from the drop down from the top first, we're going to want to make sure that the correct product group is selected. Then just change whatever we'd like to. In this case, we are changing the printer profile. So this is going to be for all of the products in this beef and lamb dishes product group. And we're going to set them to main restaurant grilled. We can see that's been turned on to set there. And click OK. Going to get prompted just to continue there. And those have been set. Now this window does stay open in case we want to then immediately go to another product group and set something different. Those changes have been applied though. If we close that and we open the next product down the list, we can confirm that that printer profile has been assigned. If we save and go to next, we can confirm that's been assigned to the next one, and the next one, and the next one. By the way, I should point out that that did actually set the printer profile to a product group there. That is not going to actually do anything though. That will not have an effect on the actual printing of products in that group. Only an individual product's printer profile will be followed. Another thing that I do want to point out though, I should point out, if I open an individual product up again, is that if we go to the store/pricing settings tab, we can set an overriding store printer profile. So a printer profile at the prod store level. Again, not a great example here since we still only have one store. I promise you the next lesson is going to cover multi-store setup, and then some of these things will make a bit more sense. But if we had multiple stores in this venue, and maybe this product, this T-bone meal, was also sold at the bistro, maybe in the bistro we would need this product to print to the bistro grilled printer profile instead of the main restaurant grilled one, so that it's going to be routed to a different set of printer types there. So that is what this prod store level printer profile can be used for, is if we do need to override this main product setting for a single store. Anyway, what I will do now is I will pause the video again. I'm going to assign all the other products in this database their printer profiles so that when we get to our demo later, everything will print where it needs to. I will be back in just a second. Alright, so I've gone ahead and assigned all of those printer profiles to, or I should say printer profiles to all of the products in this demo database that I've been using in this course. Now, in case I went through all of that a bit too quickly there, and maybe you're into a more of a flowcharty diagram type thing as a visual learning tool, as opposed to me clicking around through back office, I had previously put this diagram here together to serve this purpose in a different training course, but felt that it could be useful here also. So that's why these are named all different things here than what we've been seeing. But looking at this, we might start with, if I can zoom in here, we might start with the venue settings in the top right here, so where we can name and define these 6 remote printer types. Then over in the till settings, we can assign the physical printers and the printer formats, which each printer for each printer type for that till. And we will get to the printer formats next, by the way. That full list of 16 printer types are then available for us to assign to the printer formats, to the printer profiles, and then a printer profile that has been, configured to up to 6 printer types is then going to be assigned to a product. In this example, when we sell this bacon cheeseburger here, that has been from this till, that's been configured with this printer profile that's set to go to these printer types, and it's sold from this till, it is going to print. And again, these are not real physical printers here, these are a different type of virtual printer that I've used in the past. It would print to our printer something like this. If I can figure out how to zoom out now, that's okay, I'll just scroll there. Cool, but we can see that in this example, when that bacon cheeseburger is sold from that till, it's going to print to that printer profile, therefore to those 3 printer types, which for this till means it is, means it is going to be printed to the 3 physical printers that have been configured for those printer types. You can see from my incredible editing skills here that it might look something like this. Keep in mind when we get to the demo later, and imagine that the virtual printer that I show you is actually a bunch of these Epson thermal printers though, okay? So with all the routing portion of the remote printing behind us now, hopefully this all makes sense to you, whether it sort of clicked when I was going through back office or whether it's clicked now, seeing this sort of laid out like this. But now that we have the remote printing all figured out, we now need to determine which information is going to actually print out, and that is where printer formats come in. So there is a ton of information that comes along with diving deep into all of the printer format configuration options, so we will try to keep this portion of the lesson a bit higher level and group a lot of the printer format options together. If there are any specific printer format configurations that we just sort of skim over today and you would like a bit more context or information on, please refer to the written documentation for some details on those. Now, just like the printer profiles component, printer formats can be found in the operational setup menu. And from here, once that opens, we can add, edit, and delete them, as well as copy an existing printer format if we'd like to make a duplicate and then apply some minor changes or something like that. Very helpful option there. Now, unlike most of the back office lists that are blank for a new database, there are going to be two printer formats that are shipped with the software. We've got a standard receipt format and we have a standard kitchen/bar format. If I double click on the standard receipt printer format, it is going to open in a new window for us where we can see how it's configured and we can make some changes from here. Essentially, this is where we set what we want printed and how we want it printed. We'll go through these options in just a minute, but just take a mental note of how this is set up here. And if I close this for now and we open the kitchen/bar printer format, we can see that it's configured differently. There's some different things checked on, different things checked off. It's got different header information shown down here. Essentially just different information that's being configured to be printed and to be printed in a different way, a different format, if you will. Meaning that when a product or products are sold and printed to a printer type using this format, the printout will look much different than if it were to print out to a printer type using the receipt format, for example. So in fact, if I actually save this, or I'll cancel this, and we head back to our workstation maintenance, and on the printing setup tab, we can see that this same standard receipt format has been assigned to every single printer type by default. We probably don't want that. We would at least want to change the remote printers to use the standard kitchen/bar format. So I will change that for those. And we may even want to create some additional formats to use. Actually, later in the course, when we get to prize promotions, you'll see that we will need to create a printer format to assign to those. For now though, if I save that and we head back to the printer formats themselves, we'll see what some of these configuration options are all about. So I won't bother creating a new one at the moment, but it is easy to do just using that add printer format option from the top. But keep in mind that if you do that, you will be starting completely from scratch there. So you may prefer to actually make a copy of one of these existing formats and then apply some changes to it. But for this printer format set up for the standard receipt printer that I've got open here, first things first, the format name field is editable, so we can change this if we'd like to. Just keep in mind that we'll want to name each one obviously something relevant so that we know what's what when we are assigning them to the printer setups at the till level. Before we move down to the rest of the form, we will also want to make sure that the correct type of printer format is selected, which right now is on receipt. Now if I tab down through the other available types here, you'll see that the form is going to change dynamically as each one offers different printing options depending on the reason for printing, or what we're printing, or what's supported for different printing purposes or different hardware. By the way, you might notice that both the invoice type here and the receipt type have the same exact options. The difference between these is that the receipt type is used for printing to smaller POS printers, while the invoice type is used for full size or A4 printing there. Anyway, we will be sticking with the receipt type in this lesson. Now, as we move down to the options that are available for this, notice that they've been clustered into sections to make things a bit organized and easier to understand. So we've got general options, product options, condiment options, tips, handling fees, room charge, some miscellaneous things here, and then we have a header and footer text section over here. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we don't exactly have time to go through all of these in this lesson. I believe we're at probably about 30 minutes in at this point, and we've got a little bit left to cover, probably another 15-20 minutes to go if I had to guess. But what we will do is just quickly skim through these, at least to give you an idea of what's here. And then by all means, feel free to test out some different configurations in your system and do some test prints from SmartPause. But in this general options section, we have things like we can choose to consolidate products together when they're printed, and you can see we've got a few different options there. We can choose to print products in groups based on sorts or types, so we have all of our different sort and type options there. We've got a whole horde of options with what to print and how to print, ranging from printing seat numbers, item counts, discount summaries, various account information, possibilities to print some info in larger sizes, so on and so forth. You will notice that some of these things that flags are off for on this standard receipt printer format here, they're off for a reason. It's because we probably don't need to print certain things on receipts, but we may want to print them to remote kitchen or bar printers, so certain things that are off in this format are going to be turned on for the kitchen and bar printer format. Or maybe we could create a new printer format for, let's say, a delivery and pickup printer, and we would want maybe a mix of things printing there. That concept of some things needing to print to for certain formats is going to be a theme throughout, but that's why we do have all these options here. But anyway, we'll continue on. We can also choose to print a duplicate copy if we'd like to. We have the options to hide some info here as well. We also have, if I come to the top right of this general option section, we have an option or a concept called printing priorities, which does need to be set up elsewhere. And then once we have some printing priorities created, we can assign those here. It is very easy to set up, and it is well documented in written documentation, so feel free to search for that and set up some printing priorities in your database if you'd like to. In the other printers section here, use case would be not for our receipt format here, but for remote kitchen printers. Maybe on those printouts we want to show that products have been printed to other printers too. This we'll be able to set that up here so that we can see, let's say from the grill printer, it'll show us that mains, we can turn on things like mains, entree, starters, and we can set that to either show that certain products have printed to other printers, or that certain print sorts have printed to other printers. Alright, moving on to the product options then. Most of these settings are fairly self-explanatory, whether we want to print the product short name, long name, combination, etc. there. How product discounts are going to be printed, if at all. Something we may want to turn on again for receipts, but most likely not for remote kitchen printing. Speaking of remote kitchen printing though, we might want to use these options here to set how product names themselves and other details are printed to make certain info stand out more on kitchen and bar printouts. Basically, we can completely customize exactly how and what product info is printed, right down to digits and decimals down here. For condiment options, that is, if we're choosing to print condiments at all, we would need to turn that flag on. These are another thing that may or may not need to be printed on receipts, but I think would certainly want to be printed in the kitchen or at the bar. So with that print condiments flag turned on, the rest of the condiment options come to life there for us. And the options for these are similar to some of what we have for products as far as how they're printed, with options for printing large, printing in red, printing bold, and so on. By the way, if we are printing condiments on receipts, we can use this add price to base product flag to do just that. Rather than show condiment prices separately, we can add them into the base product's price. Tips and handling fees obviously would not be used for kitchen printing. The tip suggestions would probably only be printed on receipts in regions around the world where tipping is popular, so if tipping is not a thing where you live, you can probably pretty much ignore this section. What both of these sections will do is calculate tip and handling fee amounts based on a transaction's total charges, and whichever percentages are entered here. And for handling fees, we can also customize the text or name of the fees. Here we can enter some text into these fields. Room charge is obviously only going to be used where those are relevant, but we can choose if we want to print the room number, guest name, signature line. If we move into this little miscellaneous section here for the top and bottom logos. Bit of background: most printers, the physical hardware, can have logos loaded into their memory, so we can use these fields to set the logo number to be printed, or we can leave them as 0 to not print anything. The tax indicator here, we can select to have the tax show to the left or the right or not at all. And lastly, for the header and footer, we can use these here. Well, we'll be prompted to save some changes there. We can use this, and I probably didn't want to save those changes that I did there, but we can use these toggles to toggle back and forth between the header and the footer, and we can activate up to 10 lines of text for each of these, and then enter some text into the field that we do want to print. Usually something like this with the venue name and maybe some contact information, things like that. And then using these options, these flags to the right, we can set the aesthetics of each line as far as font style and color, and if we want things centered and so forth. And don't want to save those. For the footer, same thing. We can turn on up to 10 separate lines here and enter some text into those to print. I'm just going to try to remember what I changed here and inadvertently saved. I think printing condiments to receipts was one that I didn't need on. That might have been it. Cool, so we'll just go ahead and save this here. Now if we open the standard kitchen/bar format, we can see that it is configured a bit differently. It is set to print things like seat number, order time, item count, to print the over here in the product options section, to print the quantity first, meaning that let's say something like 3 margaritas are ordered together, it will print as 3 margaritas rather than have the product name be first and then the quantity, so margaritas 3. It seems, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but in a busy hospitality environment, that can make all the difference of the bartender, setting out to make 1 margarita and then come find out a couple minutes later that they actually needed to make 2, and they probably could have made all 3 at one time in a batch. But anyway, we do have options like that. Use case for having that flag turned on for a printer format. We also do have condiments printing for our kitchen and bar printers, with them printing in large and in red. And we have some different header text here, just saying please prepare, being nice and polite to the kitchen and bar staff here. And no footer text at all there. Cool, so yeah, nothing overly complicated with these. Again, just choosing what information is going to be printed and the format that it's going to be printed in. Then, as I've already showed earlier, I'll cancel out of this again, and if we go back to workstation maintenance, we would then assign our formats to our printer types here. So we come full circle. Not only is this where we define the physical printer routing to determine where certain things are going to print, we're also defining the formats to be used here to determine what and how those things will print. I should mention also that as much as there is this sort of web of configurations for routing remote printing, for receipt printing, all we need to do is create the printer device on the venue until list, then assign the printer to the receipt printer type here, and have the format assigned. In this case, in my database for this course, for this demo, I have just set up one of my 3 virtual printers as a virtual receipt printer and have assigned that there, and then I've got all the rest of these just printing to that same as receipt. Also, while we're here, before we jump into SmartPause and start going through some demos, I just want to point out these receipt flags down here, this section, that we can use to always print receipts automatically for certain types of transactions or when specific types of payment have been tendered, for example. So a few different options here that we can set to always print. Alright, so what we'll do now, now that we've gone through the whole gamut of receipt and remote printing, is we will head to SmartPause and we'll see all of this come to life. I should point out that for our demonstration, I have mentioned this already, that I'm going to be using a virtual printer that I can show on screen, which emulates a real physical printer. That's what I've got set up. If I just click OK to save that. That's what I've got set up as printers in my venue and till list here that have been added to this workstation, are these 3 virtual printers. Now, I did mention this earlier also, but I'll just repeat it. So because I only have 3 available, one is set up for receipts, one is set up for the bar, one is set up for all of the shared kitchen printing. That would most likely not be the case in the real world, certainly not in this venue. If this were a real venue where I've created, several different printer profiles and used all 6 available remote printer types. But yeah, so for our example here, all of the food orders are going to print to the same virtual kitchen printer, but the printouts will be split as though they are printing to separate physical printers. Anyway, just wanted to point that out, but let's take a look. Alright, so we are logged into SmartPOS here. We have our virtual comm printer set up. Hopefully you can see everything on the screen as I've got it laid out here. I'll just sort of click back and forth between these as we need to see the printers a bit better there. But yeah, you can see these are my receipt printer, kitchen printer, and bar printer here. Alright, so what I'll do is I'm just going to ring up a quick retail transaction. I know in the last lesson when we went through the table and table server setups, I said that we would run through some demos for those scenarios, and we definitely will. I just first want to run through a quick retail transaction, so I'll just ring up a couple products here, not attached to a table, and we can see that our promotions are still active here, and I will add some food products also, some with some condiments here, why not? And we'll add something else here. And we'll go ahead and pay for that, and we will just pay for that with cash and click OK. And we have closed that out, which has sent that through our remote printer routing here. And we can see for our kitchen printer here, again, because I have this kitchen printer assigned to several different printer types, that it has printed out to, these would essentially be all separate stations in the kitchen. So because I've rung up a couple of things that would be printing to the grill, to the main restaurant grill printer profile, to the main restaurant non-grill printer profile that they have printed to. This would essentially be like to the grill, to the flat top, to the expo station, and we have and then these are the drinks that I've printed to. I think that beverage printer profile is set up to print to the dessert/cold station, and then also to the bar, so that's why those have printed twice there. Well, and we can see the format that those have printed at based on that standard kitchen/bar printer format that we looked at. And notice that receipt has not printed here, but I can manually print that. It's because I don't have any of those auto print flags turned on, but we can manually print that, and we can see how that would look based on that printer format. Cool, so what we can do now is go through a quick, just a basic demo for dining table. So we will use our dining table group from the last lesson, if you recall back. If we come over to this tables tab and we just reference the flags that we have on for this table group name called table, which is where we will be creating these tables, that we do have these flags turned on to ask for name, ask for the number of guests, ask for a seat, ask if change is a tip. What else will we encounter now? Pre-closed tables is turned on. We also have do not ask close turned off, so it should ask us to close. And we also have ask splits as guests, and we've got our waiter things turned on here also. By the way, I should point this out too, that I have set up some colors for all of these. I also have configured the table courses here just for the 3 starters, mains, and desserts. So because of that, I have set these to black here so that these colors are not going to be shown there. And by the way, I'm logged in here as head waiter Casey, which you might remember from the last lesson also, has certain table privileges enabled, but certain table privileges not enabled, or I guess certain table restrictions turned on in regards to table service. Also remember that we have these table till functions that are set up for the table group. So in this case, when I click on this table list till function, it is going to open our table list, but it is going to be for that dining table group. and it's empty at the moment. But once we do have some tables that are sat and progressing through their meals, they would all be shown here. So if I go new table, we're going to be prompted to enter the table number. I'm going to try to remember the table numbers that I've configured in this database that I can actually use. And we are then going to be prompted to enter a guest name. Why is that? Is because that the table group has been configured to prompt for a guest name. Now, I mentioned in the last lesson that there is a way that we can add that manually, and I'll show you how we can do that in a little bit. Name this guest for this table Didi, and we'll say it's going to have a guest count of 3. That's prompted also because that's set up in the table group settings, and then because we have that flag turned on to prompt for splits for the guests, we are then prompted for that. I will click no for that in that case. And now we have our new table created and we can start adding some products to it. Now because I have the flag turned on for seats, I am going to be prompted to enter the seat number. I will just select OK. Now I've created a couple till functions here to just increment to the next seat number. So if I don't click that, if I click the next product, it is going to prompt me to enter the seat number. However, if I do just hit increase seat number, that has now selected seat 3 for the next product that I rung up. Is just going to go straight to that. If we've rung up something incorrectly there, we can change our seat number. I've set up a separate iteration of that till function to allow us to do that. Now if we select maybe some starters that don't need to go to a specific seat number if they're being shared, we can tap the share button there and that will show as SH for the seat number indicating that they're being shared. If we now save that table, that is going to send those products back to the remote printers. Here we go. So again, we have our the food that's printing to several separate printers there, and we have our drinks that are printing to both the bar printer and to the dessert/cold printer. And for the drinks, we can see that the seat numbers have been printed there next to those items. And for the arancini itself, because we selected share for the seat number, that is going to show there. Now I should point out that for my virtual printer, this emulator here is not going to show exactly how these would be printed out. We can see that these have been sort of pushed down to the separate line here. If this were an actual printout, this would print the @1 would print to the right of this item over here, for example. Now, if we head back to our product to Smart Pause and to the table list, we can see that this table now has a status of starters sold, and I can reopen this table in a couple different ways. I can highlight that and click select down here, or I can just double tap on that to reopen our table. And what we'll do is I'll just add a few mains. There we go, and I will ring those up, and we can see that those are printing as well. Along with, by the way, I'll point out that the condiments are printing in red there. That's because that the printer format is configured that way. By the way, we also do have within the printer format to group products. In this case, it is by I believe it's the product sorts. That's why these are printing as mains. So that way, if there were mains and starters that had been rung up together, they would be split out separately with the mains grouped together and then the starters grouped together separately. I'll show you an example of that actually. Cool. So there's the example there. We can see the starters are grouped together. The mains are grouped together. The desserts would not be printing to the same stations, so that's why those have printed to this. This would be in our virtual setup here, that those have printed separately to that dessert printer type. And then lastly on the bottom here, we are going to see everything. This would be the printout from the Expo/Pass printer type, so that does have everything listed there. Anyway, that's just another example of how those would ring up there. And if I reopen that table, and we'll say that they're at the end of their meal now, they've had a big night out here. Oh, didn't mean to do that. Forgot the pay option over here in this database. That might be located differently in yours. And we will go with cash, and we'll just say they're going with $250 here. And because we have that flag turned on at the table group to ask if an overpayment is a change or tip, that is exactly what that is asking us here. And let's just go with make that tip there. Now, if we go back to the table list again, we will see that it is showing as dessert sold. That should actually be the reason that this hasn't closed. If you remember back to the last lesson, if we go back to Casey, our operator here, that does not have the ability to close tables. That is why that table has not closed. So if I log out and I log in as our maitre d', who does have the ability to close tables. Now if I log in as that operator and we head back to the table list, I reopen that, which has a balance of 0, and I just go pay, just pay it to cash, and it's obviously going to be to 0. But now, because the operator that I'm logged in as does have the ability to close tables, and the flag is turned off at the table group level, for the table group, so that we are going to be asked to close the table. It's not going to close automatically. Once the balance is brought to 0, we are going to be prompted to do that. I will click yes, but if we go back into the table list, it is going to show as pre-closed. Again, that is because of the table group flag turned on for pre-close, but if we go ahead and select that, we'll get a notification here stating that it's been pre-closed and asking if we would like to set it as available. And if we click yes, the table status has been changed and it is now completely closed and will be available to be seated again. Alright, I'll run through another quick demo just to show you some of the other table till functions that we looked at last time. I will actually I will log back out and log back in as our head waiter. And let's go ahead and start another table. Again, I'll try to remember a table number that's actually exists in this database. Oh, one of the table till functions that I actually didn't show you last time was the set waiter table function, but that is going to be used for exactly that. Now in this case, because Casey head waitstaff is set up as a waiter, they are going to, and the table group is set up for table waitering. Casey is going to be assigned to that table when they create it. That is because of those things, and also because they have access to all tables. Now, if this table were assigned to someone else and they have the ability to set table waiters, they could then go waiter is me. And if there were other staff members who were logged in at the moment and are set up as table waiters, they would be listed here and they could be set as the waiter for this table. But just wanted to show you that. We'll also show you that we can change the guest count here if we have entered that incorrectly. These are a couple of, this is that name and count till function that I showed you last time that we can set up differently to either prompt for both of those things together or just one or the other. In this case, I've set those up as 2 different iterations of that till function. So we could change that if we actually entered that in wrong, and maybe now we want to enter the full name. We can do that. Just to show you there what I mean for that is that, I'll need to go to the table panel. So this one has been configured here just for guest count, and this one just for the name. By the way, the set waiter one here, the only option to configure for this is to enter 1 in there to keep that table open once that has been set. Otherwise, it does save the table if we change the waiter set there. Cool, so I'll just order some drinks for this table. Only got 2 guest seating here, so this will go a bit quicker for this portion, but I'll just go ahead and save that. We can see those print. Well, we don't really need to reference that again because we've seen that. We've seen how those things are print. There is one other instance of printing that I will show you in a minute when we get to it. But for now, if we go back to the table list, we can see that it is seated and they've only ordered drinks, no courses yet. So I should mention this, that as we ring up items that are mapped to those product sorts that we have set up as courses for the venue, as we sell those and serve them and set them as away, the status will be updated here. But at the moment, because none of those things have been added to this transaction, it is just showing, or to this table, it is just showing as seated. But if we go ahead and open that and we sell some products to them that do have that product sort assigned, let's say for example that the product sort is mapped to the course 1, which we have set for starters here. Just to give you a refresher of that, if we come back to the venue maintenance here, over to the tables tab, that we have the starters set as course 1. And for those items that I've rung up there, they have that same sort set as their product sort called starters. So once I do add them to the table and save it, now that is why the table status is going to be changed to starters sold. If we come in here and we head to our additional table function, so table panel 2 here, and we can set course 1 as away. I explained this till function to you in the last lesson, that is going to print a message to the remote printers that till or that starters are away. Oh, that hasn't printed here because I have not set a printer profile to that till function. So a good option, or a good opportunity to show you that. We need to go to table panel 2, and we do need to enter the printer profile ID in here. So that is where these printer profiles come in handy. And again, I'm not using course 4 in this database, but those are just still there from the template that was copied. Well, so that one didn't work for us, but if we can see that the status has changed to starters away. And if we reopen that, what we might do now is go starters served, so course 1 served. And that is going to print that message to the remote printers based on that printer profile being assigned to that till function button, that the starters have been served. So that would be a little indication to the culinary staff that they need to move on to the next, to firing off the next course. In this case, we actually haven't rung up the next course yet, so let's go ahead and do that. Now they would know when those items have been served, but we can also just to keep everyone on the same page so that this table statuses get updated as well, and to send that message back to the kitchen just in case anyone missed it, we can then go ahead and send the and use the main served table function there, or till function I should say, and send that back through. Cool, a couple final table till functions I will show you if I open that table again is the one thing we'll do is let's transfer this to another table. So it's currently at table 24, and let's go ahead and say maybe they want to move to table 27 for some reason, and we'll be prompted to confirm that. We'll then be prompted if we would like to print a message to the kitchen. So in case that, let's say we just rung up these meals and they haven't actually been served yet, the kitchen might need to know that these guests have moved from one table to the next. So we could send that message to the kitchen, and that way when those meals get run out to the table, they will go to the correct table. They won't inadvertently get sent to some different people who have now been sat at table 24 and shouldn't be getting those items. So we'll print a little table transfer message there. And in this case, table 24 is going to be set as pre-closed because that's been set up in the table group. That way, if someone does need to go ahead and clean that table, reset it, so forth, before it will actually be made available, it will stay in that pre-closed status. But anyway, we'll open up table 27 here. A couple other things I would like to show is that we can set it as tagged. If we do need to do that for whatever reason, maybe these are some VIP guests, and that's how we indicate that. If we save that and we go back to the table list, we can see that is going to be in this sort of greenish color here to indicate that table has been tagged. I'll reopen that. One other thing I will show you is to set the warning. I believe this has been configured to 30 minutes. If we refer back to the cancel that. If we refer to the table warning till function here, it is set for 30 minutes from now, and it is set to display end set. Cool, so we've gone ahead and set a table warning there that is going to, at 5:04, which is 30 minutes from now, it is going to prompt at the till with a bit of a warning. The table is going to be highlighted in red, basically as a warning to hurry up and get things moving here for the table. So just one use case there for setting that. Alright, the final thing I will show you today, if I just go ahead and save that table, is going to be our graphical table maps. Now, I will show you real quickly that what I've done is I've gone ahead and created two separate table maps, one for our bar here and one for the main dining room that looks like this, and I have assigned those both to our table map set, and that table map set is then being used by our workstation there. So if we now use the till function button that has been set up to access the graphical table map, we are going to be able to view initially the main dining, and we can see the couple different tables here, and we can see their statuses. So table 24, which we saw from the table list, is pre-closed. We can refer to this legend over here. That is why that is showing in that red color. And table 27, which we have tagged and has that little tag on it there, and that same sort of foresty green color there. But then the main table itself is going to show in that green color, indicating that mains have been sold on it. Also, if we remember back to the graphical table flags, where we can set those to show certain information on the table. In this case, we are seeing the table number, the guest count, and the table balance. There's a couple other options from here. By the way, we do have options up here to toggle between the two different table maps. We can see that we have a customer set at the bar here as well, and their table warning has been turned on. If we go to, let's just save that. If we go back to the table map, we go back to our bar area, we can see the table list here, and we can see that that warning has been set there. It has been turned on, and that's why that is showing as in that red color there. We come back to our table map. Other thing I will show you is that we can actually edit this from here if we would like to. We'll be prompted there, and keep in mind that operators will need the privileges enabled to be able to do this, but once that is in edit mode, we can then move some tables around. We can tap on a table and access some different functionality here. I will not save that. I'll just exit edit mode and cancel no save. There we go. And the very last thing that I will point out is that we do have an option here to refresh the map. So this would be in, let's say that there's 3 separate tills that operators can use to be accessing tables, and we can use that to refresh it. So let's say we can't actually see the dining room at the moment, but maybe table 21 has just been sat, or maybe table 25 has just had their next course rung up. Something like that. If for whatever reason we need to refresh the map and see that those changes that another operator has just pushed through, we can refresh the map here to be able to see those changes on our end. Alright, well that is going to be a wrap for this lesson for all things remote printing related, or for remote and receipt printer related. So we've seen all of our remote printing setup, from printer formats to printer profiles and everything in between. We've seen how to assign physical printers and printer formats to the printer types at the workstation level, and we have run through some demos in SmartPOS to see how things will print to the printers that they're routed to, and how they will print as far as the formats being set up. And as promised in the last lesson, we have seen some demos regarding our table service and the till functions involved there. So yeah, as always, thank you very much for your time, and we'll see you in the next one.